fall.
Yeah.
What Hobbs Kessler did is amazing. What this race was great. We needed finally a fast race on U.S. soil with featuring predominantly Americans running not 3:38. Craig Engels 3:33. I think that showed that he is to be challenged with, like, the idea that two college kids and a high school kid could make a team, and everyone's just ignoring Craig Engels. 3:33 shows that he's his normal form. But obviously, the story out of this race was Hobbs Kessler running 3:34.36. He's 18 years old. He runs 3:34.36. He breaks the high school record. That was 3:38. But a high school 1500 is not really run that often, right? Because how often are they doing that? I mean, the real thing is you could say this converts to a 3:51 mile, which is clearly faster than what Alan Webb ever did. And it's incredible. He's the fastest high schooler of all time. And we should praise it. My main thing that whenever I see this is I always think about, is this unusual? Is this a once in a generation type performance? Or is this just a result of the times that we're in? And I think it's really clearly more a result of the times that we're in, as opposed to this is going to be a record that stands for forever, the same way Jim Ryan's record stood forever and Alan Webb's record stood forever. I honestly think we're going to see more Hobbs Kesslers in the next 10 years. And I think we will see more high school kids run 3:34 to 3:36 in the 1500 in the next 10 years, which is great.
Why do you think that?
Okay. So first of all, let's think about how crazy is what Hobbs ran. He ran 3:51 in the IAAF points tables. A 3:51 is equivalent to 1,183 points. That is the equivalent of running a 10:0700, a 20:24 200, a 44:9 400, a 1:44 800, 13:07 5K, and 27:27 10K. Now, if you look at that, seeing teenagers run those sprint times, we have seen that multiple times. Seeing teenagers run 13:07s, 27:27s, and a 1:44, we don't see that often. And I think,
or ever in the U.S., but yes, yeah,
or ever, right? 13:07.
13:07's fast.
But, yeah. I take it back, but like I think it shows that in the U.S., our sprinters have been able to get to an elite level quicker than distance runners. I think it's because of the way the event is, that just your body is able to run a 10:07 quicker than it is to be able to run a 3:34 when you're 18 years old. I don't know. But what I wanted to say is I really do think Hobbs Kessler, I think this performance is the same as when Donovan Brazier ran 1:43 as a freshman in college. I think Hobbs is basically, I know he's in high school, but I look at him as just like a phenom freshman in college, because he's having college training. He's training with Nick Willis and being coached by a world-class coach. He's not being coached by the local gym teacher, and he's having like a college type focus of like doing the right things that you get once you leave high school and go into college. And you saw Donovan Brazier go from a 147 guy in high school to 143 his first year. And I think we're seeing that with Hobbs Kessler. Hobbs Kessler goes from like, hey, I'm like a 410, 415 type guy in the mile. And then the next year, I'm now running 3:34 in the 1500. And I think it's because of the training environment. And obviously, a lot of it, you have to have the talent and the dedication and the hard work. But I think this is just a result of his environment. And so I think we're going to see more high school kids do the Hobbs Kessler method. And I mean, we saw it happen 3 or 4 years ago with Jacob Ingebrigtsen, right? He was like, how is this teenager running world-class times? Well, it's because he's training like a pro. He has two of the greatest training partners in his two older brothers. I think we're seeing that with Hobbs Kessler. Why is he running 334? He's training like a pro. If you take a world-class, if you take an all-time U.S. talent and put him in an environment to run well, we're going to get this. And I think it should encourage us to do it more. We should encourage, I think there's a lot of other untapped talents out there who should do it more. And yeah, that's what I say. I think Hobbs Kessler is basically the opening is a prototype. It's the example that other future elite high school runners are going to base off of in order to get to the next level at an earlier stage, as opposed to waiting till your freshman year when you finally get to college training.
Okay. So basically you're saying you think U.S. 1,500-meter running, U.S. distance running is going to catch up to sprinting in this next generation, is what you're saying. And you're saying,
and the way it does it,
is I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to understand what you're saying before I tell you why you're wrong. And the way they're going to close that gap is they're going to have more access to quote unquote professionalized high level training. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that you normally don't get in high school because you're coached by the local gym.
But the high school sprinters have that now. I mean, I know we're seeing more people go pro earlier, but your run of the mill average high schooler obviously doesn't have access to that. I don't know. I like the tables like you do. I'm a big believer in the tables as giving a baseline, but it's not an end all be all. And I look at what Webb did 20 years ago, and it's crazy to think it was 20 years ago because I am old. And I think there's a reason why it took somebody 20 years to break that mark. And during that time, you had obviously the Webb effect, right? Webb, Ritz, and Hall started this or helped further, I think, along with a combination of things. I think it's just the preponderance of, big elite meets helped as well too. People sharing training and being able to see what other people were doing, I think played a part in that as well too. And I think if it was hey, this is just, this is now going to be common and Hobbs is kicking in the door, I think we would have seen it before Hobbs, right? I mean, there's been guys who have come through the system who have had high-level training in the last 10, 20, 15 years who haven't gotten to these heights. I agree with you that it is a perfect storm here in that you have obviously a huge talent. You have clearly something that's working where he has a professionalized training environment where he has access to Coach Warhurst, who's doing a great job training him and working out with pro athletes as well too. But I don't know. I don't know if the way you're talking about this is the way people would talk about sub fours in general, right? You had that big drought. Webb did it. And then the next guy, and then the next guy, and the next guy, to the point where 359 is just like standard. Matthew Maton did it. And I mean, you could look at go on down the list, Legowski, et cetera, et cetera. Leo Dashback this last year. But I think, and I agree with you there, that there will be more sub fours. But I think when you get down into, Hobbs is running what'd you say, equivalent to 351? I think when you get to 355, I think that's where you start testing the limits of that, hey, this is just going to become the norm thing, and you have to have somebody who's supremely special. I also want to point out one thing, and I think you mentioned it at the top. This race was special, and that's what it also takes too. Just like Webb's race was special, don't get me wrong. Webb had the benefit of running in a pre-classic with Hicham El Garouche, and you go back and watch that race, and Webb ran a really smart race. But what if the Portland Track Festival 1500 ended up being a 336 race? I mean, would
probably runs 337, 338. Yeah.
Right. So again, and part of that is getting access to these races, running enough of these races so you're in there at the right time to run, to take advantage of the opportunity. But there's a chance this could have been a 336, 337 race, and we never would have known. I think that's a piece of it as well too. Uh, so
Also,
I
you got to
don't
look at
know.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Also, you got to look at what the carrot is. In high school, the carrot is 4 flat. So it's not surprising that pretty much a majority of the people who break 4, they're all running 359 because they're all thinking about breaking 4. In this situation, the carrot is the Olympic standard, which is now faster, right? If if we were in 2016 and Hobbs Kessler was coming around, he wouldn't be running 334. He'd be running 335.9, like because the standard would have been 336, right? So
Yeah.
we created a better carrot, so that means it forced everyone to try to run a second faster, which helps, right? I'm sure whatever the standard was during Alan Webb's time, if he's trying to make the Olympics or whatever, he's not. No one tries to run 5 seconds under the standard, right? They all try to just like pace for the standard. I think that's also a reason why we saw 334. It's because it happened to be also an Olympic year. If this was just a U.S. off year, right,
Mhm.
where there's no like there's just a U.S. champs and the standard is just like 337, he's gonna run 337.1, right? Like I think it's perfect storm, like you said. The training, I would also say the pandemic, where he's under raced for a whole year going into this, so he's
Sure.
fresher. And then the carrots, the environment of that race. I mean,
Well,
and
listen, we
he's
won't
yeah,
know. We'll know in 5 years, 6 years, right? Like whether or not the floodgates opened because of Hobbs Kessler, right? This isn't something that is going to be an unsolvable question, right? If 334 is still the record down the line, we will definitely know. I think though we when you talk about a guy who just turned 18 running faster than the collegiate record, right? And running anytime a person that young runs a time that could put them in contention for a diamond league, I don't think you can expect that to become the norm unless the entire event just gets incredibly quicker over the next few.
but like you have to put
That's my point.
I mean, there's caveats to saying the phrase "he ran faster than a collegiate record." There's also a 19-year-old in college right now who ran faster in the mile. Cole Hawker ran 350 in the mile, and he's
Sure,
only
but
19.
my point being is when you run just like when Webb ran 352 or 353, when you run a time that is so far out of your classification, I I don't think it's unreasonable for people like me and other people to be like, wow, it may be 20 years, 30 years before we see something like that again. I get what you're saying, which is like, no, this lines up. The bar is just going to keep getting raised and raised and raised, and eventually there's going to be a bunch of people running this time. But I think the reason people are reacting the way they did is because it's such a huge jump up, such a huge improvement from where it was, from a guy who's like, to me seems undertrained, right? Under raced. Nick Willis said, what, he hasn't even won a high school title yet. I mean, this guy is relatively new to running. It's incredible what he's been able to do. So I'd take the over on when you think this record is going to be broken, because it sounds like you're saying that you think it's going to happen again. I just think, and I said this back when he ran, was it 357 indoors? Is that right?
Yeah,
I said we need to start looking at 359s differently than 357s. And what I meant by that was Kessler's mark and the manner in which he did it was so much more impressive than these guys who were sneaking under 4. Granted, high score breaking 4 is amazing. It's sensational. But we get so wrapped up on that round number that we lose all perspective of like, one indicates that a guy could go on and do this, and the other one's like, oh man, you had 6 cracks at it, and then senior year you ran 359.8. You're going to go join a college team where 5 other people can do that. You're going to need to continue to improve. That's the difference between the two, right? 357 is not the same as a 359, just as we wouldn't talk about, you wouldn't talk about a 10-1 the same way you talk about a 9-9. But everything gets lumped together just because we're so obsessed with this idea of sub 4.